Hey, welcome back to PanzerGarage. As you would notice from the channel, it's been a little while since I put something up. The last one was the Master Box BMW sidecar with Russian troops in it. Yeah, bits happened since then. Moved house, and I've got a temporary setup at the moment until I look at where I'm going to end up long term. But I thought it'd be good to get back into doing a couple of things. So I've sort of set up what I really need, I suppose, to get some things done. But last year, around the time of doing the BMW sidecar, I started working on two Stugs. The Dragon kit 6633, the Stug with Zim Excellent 1944 July, and the Finnish version of the Stug G as well. So we'll take a closer look at that. So the Tamiya I've started at the moment. However, I'm going to put it on pause until I finish the Dragon kit, mainly due to the changes in paint, etc. But and I need to do a little bit more research on some of the Finnish versions. I'm going to try and do a vehicle that actually existed and try and do it as close to it as I can. However, having said that, I'm pretty keen to use the logs. There's a couple of options in there that you don't have to use the logs. But just to differentiate, I've got a few Stugs to build, so having one with the logs just gives me a little bit of variety. So I might try and do that. So at the moment, where I'm at with it is I've just done the hull basically and put the undercoat on. But the rest of it at this stage, I'm just going to leave until the other kit is finished. So I'll leave that there. But at the moment, with the Dragon Stug, pretty much put together the hull. The road wheels at the moment are drying. So there it is with the undercoat. The undercoat is just that Tamiya spray. It's probably not exactly correct, but in terms of what I need to be, it's near enough, because by the time you put weathering and all that sort of stuff over it, to be honest, you're really not going to know that much of a difference. The internal so far, and I'll take you through as we go the colours on these. But again, it's very similar to the internals of my Tiger actually, except for the fact that in the Tiger, if you have a look at that video, the floor is blue-green. This is 1944 and they got rid of blue-green flooring by then predominantly. You still see the odd one around. But this one I'm going to use the primer as the floor, and the rest of it will be pretty similar to colours to what was in my Tiger, and I'll take you through as you go. So predominantly the ivory, not the early lemon ivory colour, the later sort of Panzer internal colour, and I just use Model Master for that. The top part of the vehicle is in 4 pieces, and this has been put together as well. So I'm not going to detail the internal to the engine bay because you don't see it. So pretty much I will leave the top of this not glued on, and so that you can lift it off and have a look internally. So internally to this, I want it to be done reasonably well. Probably won't be as detailed as the Tiger with decals etc. inside, but again, I want it to be fairly reasonable considering I've got the parts for it. So we'll see how that goes, but I'll take you through as we go. I've got a couple of photos internally of Stugs, and you can find these on the internet. So pretty much these are the ones that I'll be working off. You can't really see them that well. So it's better that I'll use these as a reference, but take you through once I've painted it and sort of detail it that way. But if you go back and have a look at my Tiger videos, particularly part 2 and part 3, the end of part 3 will have the completed painting scheme, and that'll show you pretty much what the internals of this is going to be, because there wasn't a great deal of difference depending on the time frame between the internals of the Panzer III / Stug, the Panzer IV and the Tiger Panther. There was differences depending on the month and the year. For example, when they changed certain colours, and there was a period of time where, for example, internal to a Panther was completely red primer, same with the Hetzer, but that was only a couple of months, 4 or 5 months. So depending on the time frame will really dictate the painting scheme internally. But this one is July 1944 production, so that's what I'm going to paint it as. Externally, I haven't worked out exactly what I'm going to do yet. I might decide to follow Dragon's schematics and hull numbers, turret numbers, but I'm still looking for an original one that I can perhaps do. So it just depends. Do I put the side skirt Schutzen on the side, or do I not? So it's a toss-up. Do I do, say, the East Prussia version, or do I do a more unidentified version? What Dragon give you as an offer is an East Prussian version, which is quite tempting to do. I think it's from the 904th Sturmgeschütz Battalion, I think, and these other options, which mainly are unidentified units. So I'd like to actually, when I do a model, generally I try to find something that's existed and that I know a little bit about. But as you probably know, that all that takes time, and when you've got a lot of things to do, sometimes you can't get to that, and sometimes you just end up using what's given to you. Also it keeps the cost down, because every time you try and find a historical based one, you end up doing so much modification to it that it costs you money. So, you know, it's all about balance, I suppose, and most modelers out there would understand that. But it is so far been a great fit for this kit. One thing I probably would point out is on the right side, in the instructions it tells you to put the hammer on, which goes in just under this piece of yellow tape here, but I ended up having to remove it to actually get a proper fit. So if you're building this, when it tells you to do the rear section of the vehicle, this part here, don't put the tools on until you've put it all together. It'll be a little bit easier for you. So we'll see how we go now to the next stage of I need to sort of put some black shading on this first. I also need to put a little bit of Humbrol's some Humbrol Mascal, which again, if you look at my Tiger video, you'll see what I did there. It's all about, because I use oil-based paints, it's about just layering it, and then after I do the black shading coat, I'll put some Mascal on so that I can remove it, and it looks like it's been scratched and weathered a little bit. Alright, so we'll see how that goes for the next video. Cool, okay, well I'll see you again when I'm at the next stage. Alright, welcome back. This is the internals of the Stug so far that have been put together. Predominantly the internals, I've been using Model Masters Panzer Interior buff. You'll note when we put this together, you'll see a line there from when the the multiple pieces meet. This is 5 pieces that kind of all meet together. I wanted to show you this before I painted over it, but there's a small gap that's in there, and what I used is just some Model Master clear cement, which is kind of like a PVA white glue sort of thing that you could use to fill. But that's where we're at so far. If you can see the internals there, there's a few more little items that are going to be placed in there, but that's pretty much what you get in the kit. You can put extra things in there, like there's no driver's area or anything like that down in there, but it's not too bad the way it is. They're the right colours, but it's got there's some more weathering in it to do in there as well, so we'll sort of see how that goes, and I'll show you as we get through later on. Okay, welcome back. So where am I at the moment? Well, I've decided to do a Normandy version with side skirt spaced armour because I've got a number of other Stugs to build, and so I've decided the East Prussian version I'm actually going to do in a Stug CD version with an L48 gun. So I've decided to go, this will be the only opportunity I'll really have to do a version with the side skirt, so I've decided to go with a Normandy version. Haven't decided on the markings yet, but that's essentially what I'm going to do paint wise, which will keep it a little bit more interesting. So that's where I'm at with that. Paint wise, here we are with the vehicle at the moment. So it's just had the primer put on, and over the top of that, well, it's had the primer put on, then it's had a coat of Mascal in various areas for chipping, and then I've put Duncan Gelb over the top. Of it, but as you'll see, it's a fairly light coat, so you'll see that there's some of the undercoat primer has come through, which I'll do another coat later, but I'm actually not too worried about some of it coming through, because long term, when you layer all the other effects over the top of it, it really doesn't matter. In fact, it will add to a little bit of depth. So if you've got some discrepancies on it at this stage and you feel that it's not perfect, don't worry too much about it, because as you layer the other effects on top of it, it will sort of sort itself out. So you'll see this in my next couple of videos, it'll sort itself out. Okay, so if we look over to the side skirts a little bit more, I've got these sort of sitting over here a little bit. So if I just sort of swing this down around here, it's not too bad in the instructions on how we deal with these side skirts. It's a little bit of fiddling around, but you'll see in the instruction there's a bit of a template that you can use. So to help you out there, what I did is I photocopied this on my printer and took the photocopy, and then for each one of these I lined it up. I lined the photocopy over the top of this and lined it up underneath, and then I got a Sharpie and I just drew through the lines that came out onto here, and you can see, if you look closely, you can see some of the black lines underneath the holders there, and then I just glued them on top. So I'll just wait for this to dry, and then I'll layer another red undercoat on this side to do. There's the brackets, that will hold it on. And then what I'll do is I'll put the brackets on and leave it, and then I'll leave the side skirts off until everything is sort of painted. The cam will be on the top of the vehicle. The cam will go on top of it. In here will stay Duncan Gelb though. The wheels will probably go green as per the instructions. And in terms of markings and units, I'll probably go, if I end up doing proper markings, I'll probably do it for the LAH division in Normandy. But from the photos I've seen so far, they don't seem to have a lot of markings on them. Maybe your Balkan Krauts, but that's about it. Alright, stay tuned for the next video. Alright, here we are back with the finished model as we're at the moment, minus the tracks and minus any weathering. So this is just a clean paint of where we're at. So no rust or anything on any of the cabling, no weathering on any of the vehicle, no weathering on the tyres of the wheels, no weathering on the tank itself. There is, you know, a rust chipping, etc., from the undercoat being chipped off using the Mascol product. So here's where we're at now. If we take the and have a look inside, here's where we are inside. Again, there's a tiny little bit of weathering going on in there. That was just easy to do at the time. The final weathering though hasn't been done. So any of the dust, any of the other black powders that I'm going to use, black brown powders, anything like that I'll use, any washes, none of that has been done yet. Right, so here at the moment with the vehicle, we have whilst I've got this top open, underneath the periscope here, you'll see we've had to put those little black mirrors in there. They're the black boxes that hold the periscope mirrors, for those that don't know. So to glue those in, so they were painted through there, the mirrors you'll see, but to glue them in though, don't use normal cement. Use something like this, which is a glass cement. It'll just mean that when you push it up through, you won't get cement on it and ruin it when you put it through. So having a glass cement there, which is kind of just like a watered down white glue or PVA glue, is kind of all that you really need. So looking at the rest of the vehicle as it stands at the moment, okay, this is ready to have the tracks on and to have the side skirts on. The design that I'm doing for paint is exactly what it is here. So the vehicle would have been delivered in dark yellow, hence in here. The brown and the green are delivered in essentially a paste form, and quite often in the field they'd mix that with petrol, diesel, anything that they can to essentially water it down, okay, and get it on. So in this case, this vehicle doesn't represent a specific vehicle from history that I've found, unfortunately. However, it's fairly close to a design that was used in Normandy, and I used the one off the box art basically. So I've painted the wheels green, left this dark yellow because the Schutzen will sit over the top of that, and then I did the camouflage design on top of it. Now I did the brown on first, as you'll notice in some places, for example there, the green is layered on top of the brown. So the equipment on the side is still clean, still shiny, because I use Model Master paint on those, so it's not as matte as say the Humbrol paints, but I use Humbrol on the machine gun. So a real difference there in terms of shine, but it doesn't really matter at this stage. That hasn't been weathered, the wooden block, none of this has yet. So the next stage, I suppose, for this will be to cover everything in a matte coat. Before I forget, here's the metal side skirts. Now in the Dragon kit they are metal, and then you assemble them. They can be a little bit painful, but again, what I'll do with this side is just give that a wash, and wash this side as well. But you'll see there the camouflage tones that I used with a bit of like ambush pattern just to break it up a little bit. What I would suggest you do with these is, once you put your side skirts on your tank that hold on your Schützen, assemble your side skirts and then test fit them on that they fit, because you need to find what order they're going to be in that fit best. Now I overlaid them so the front one is overlaid the next one, so the back one is underlaid. Now once you've got the order that works for you, because you may have to adjust some, you may have to adjust these on the back, worst case. Keep them in that order so that when you paint them, it'll have the same theme, and then you'll just be able to lift them up and then stick them on. I can't emphasize that enough, because it may stuff you around if you get your order mucked up. Alright, it's just whatever you think will fit at the time. I did the same thing with the wheels. Sometimes wheels don't fit exactly that well, so particularly to get them all in a nice line. So again, I test fitted them to see which ones fit on the sprockets as best as they could, and then I laid them out in that order, and then I glued them on. And I'd suggest that you probably do the same. So from here, everything will be matte coated. The tracks are undercoated in dark at the moment, but they will be painted. So the tracks will go on. Once the tracks and the initial dull coat is put on, I will then I'll put any decals on, of course, and then I will weather the vehicle. And then the very last thing I'll do is add the skirts on the side. So the skirts are going to be the last thing I'm going to actually assemble on the vehicle once everything else is done, because at any stage you can take these off. So I don't think I'm going to actually glue these on, if I can get away with not doing it, because at any stage, you know, as a crew, the crew can take this off, and quite often you'll see vehicles missing some of those on the side, either through being damaged, or just the crew's decided not to put it on. But again, when we're talking about the camouflage, don't be overly worried about getting exactly like box art. Got to remember, German camouflage was a very individual thing. Now, unless you're doing a vehicle from history, you know, where it would be more precise, if you're just doing a vehicle for a particular campaign, theatre, then near enough is okay, because the crew did it themselves. Okay, so put yourself in the crew's picture, and don't worry too much at this stage of the game before weathering whether things are exact or not. Okay, if you've got a little bit of overspray, a lot of that you can fix in when you get to weathering, okay, because it'll cover it. Okay, so don't worry too much about it. Just try and get a nice even spray when you're doing your spray painting. Alright, so I'll see you at the next stage, but I'm pretty happy with how it's looking so far, but I'm really hoping that this clean look and the next look that you'll see a dramatic difference. One last point, see the fire extinguisher. don't forget, as I sort of said in my Tiger video, the policy was that any fire extinguisher on the external of the vehicle is the same colour as the vehicle, so they're not red. Red fire extinguishers formerly didn't come into the 50s. Okay, so inside the vehicle, sometimes they're painted red, brown, yellow. It doesn't really matter, but externally it's camouflaged. Right? You see a lot of guys with models with red fire extinguishers. It didn't actually happen that way. Alrighty, we'll see you again soon. Hi, and welcome back to the completed vehicle post weathering. The last time you would have seen it, we had a tri-cam completed, but the vehicle was clean, so no weathering, grime, powder, anything like that, dust. Now, at this stage, we finished putting it together with the side skirts of track and using a combination of washers and powders, we see a grimy, slightly weathered vehicle. Now, given that this is a July 1944 production vehicle, including the travelling it would have gone through to get to Normandy, I remember we painted this as a Normandy vehicle. There may have been, including its time, let's assume this is around September or October, there would have been some chipping in that over time. Paint's not the same back then as what it is today. Some minor chipping and that around the edges here, a couple up here, etc. Like most military things, they tend to get knocked around a bit by their soldiers. And again, remember that this is grime, dirt, chipping, anything that's a sustained regular fighting for about 2 to 3 months with little break. Remember, they're fighting retreat from Normandy or withdrawal from Normandy, and there would have been little time other than just to keep the vehicle running. So making sure the wheels are looked after and not clogged, all that sort of stuff. The drivetrain's running properly. The gun is cleaned. In fact, it's probably going to be the cleanest thing on the tank. So it'll be all about priority driven stuff, and because it's relatively new, there wouldn't have been a high sense of maintenance at this stage, except for the regular maintenance. It's not as if this vehicle is 3 or 4 years of age and has had problems. So a newer vehicle, straight off the production line, straight into sustained fighting. So inside the vehicle, we can see there's some photos that are going to come at the end of this, which are probably better, but you can expect inside the vehicle, you probably can't see it that well here using the video camera, but on the floor there's dirt, grime, oil, that sort of stuff that you can expect. So again, if you look at dust from the outside, dirt being brought in on boots and by the crew in a hurry, they would have had camouflage on there, on and off all the time, cordite and dust from the gun, and a busy crew. You can expect it to be dirty, a little bit chipped, a lot of dust, that sort of stuff. So you can still, even though it's relatively new, it's going to get dirty fairly quickly. All it takes is 1 or 2 lots of rain and crew coming into the compartment dirty, and you will have some problems. So the light there's not that flash. It's hard to get the light actually inside the vehicle. But on the floor of course is not ivory. The floor, as we've discussed previously, is the iron oxide colour, the undercoat colour. So again, you're going to have, you can feel free to put dirt in that on the floor of the vehicle there. Okay, so that's inside the vehicle. Now I haven't decided yet what I'm going to do with this vehicle, whether it's going to be in a diorama or something. So I haven't sort of committed myself too much to the surrounding effects yet, of course. So on the outside you've got I'll just move this camera. You've got your side skirts. Now again, these are metal in the packet. So as you can see, they're all in individual pieces. So again, you don't need to worry about it being nice and neat, because in reality, they weren't nice and neat. Just go and have a look at some photos online. So these panels can come off. They just lift off. They're essentially just steel plates. So, you know, a couple of crew can lift them off. Sometimes you'll see 2 on there, 3 on there, 1 on there, if they get damaged. Or if the brackets tended to break, although this is the new version, so I didn't have as many problems with the new version on this vehicle. But again, you'll see a mix of whether they're on or not, so feel free to do that. You'll see, you can't see it very well here, but the Balkenkraus here is been softened so much it's gone into the waffle Zimmerit. You might just be able to see that. So again, use your softener to get it in there, because that's how it was. Remember, these were painted on, and they'll paint it on after the Tricam paint went on. So you can weather over it, but don't paint over it. And so therefore you'll need to spend a little extra time softening it to get that effect. So the outside, you can see it's been weathered with a series of washes, etc. And I'll go through how I did that quickly in a minute. You'll see the gun barrel there is not black and dirty like quite often is depicted in modelling. It's always a bit of a dilemma. Yes, there would have been a bit of black on there because of the cordite from the etc. But the Germans were fanatical in cleaning these things, because at the end of the day, you don't want carbon on your gun. So it's all about keeping what is needed to be used and what is important on the vehicle operational. So anything to do with their weapons, whether it be small arms or main armaments, were fanatically cleaned, just like kind of we do today. So you can see there are different types of effects there. You see a bit of chipping there, some powders, and the washers going on to adjust the colours there, and you'll see that at the back there with the wooden jack block. So again, a lot of this is subtle given that the vehicle is quite new. Wouldn't have the same degree of rust. I'm not saying you wouldn't have any. I've put a bit of light rust in places that I think are obvious, like in here, and you'll see a little bit on top here. So again, just subtle. Again, you know, this is 1940s technology, so even after a couple of months, it's quite reasonable through, you know, various events. There's going to have some chipping, maybe some light rust, that sort of thing. So basically, what did I do after it was clean, after I painted the Tricam? Well, I coated it in dull coat and let it dry for 3 to 4 days. Let it go hard, because I use enamel paints. Dull coat seals it, 2 coats of that, and I let it sit for 3 to 4 days. You know, sometimes I let it sit for up to 7 days, so it goes nice and hard. Because my washers, I actually use enamel washers as well. I've never got into the acrylic thing yet. So my washers, even though they're MIG as well, they're enamel based, so you need to be careful with those. So you need to work quickly so you don't eat through the dull coat and eat into your paint. Although sometimes, experiment with that, sometimes that works quite well. And you may see here on the rear of the Schultzen, that's exactly what happened. So some of it got eaten through, and I ended up mixing it and just slightly doing it with a bit of white spirit turpentine as well, just to get the effect that I wanted. Because remember, the very first thing I did with this vehicle was coat it in Tamiya iron oxide as the undercoat. So I've always got that as my base, and that's not going to come off. That will not come off with turpentine, really. So you can kind of play around with that a little bit and experiment. So even though that kind of happened, and here's the other side, you can make it work. So don't be afraid to play around with it. So after I did let it dry for 3 days, I used a tri filter, which is, and you'll see it on the slides at the end of this. I'll put up some slides with all the products I used, and it's a German tricolor filter that I used. Instead of, sometimes I use these type of oils and mix them, but in this case I used the tricolor filter. I think it was Interactives, AF's Interactives. But you'll see it in the slide at the end. So that worked well. Then I used an earth wash in certain locations, not everywhere, in certain locations, and a dark wash in certain locations, just to sort of break it up a little bit. Then I let those dry. Then I did another coat of dull coat. Then once the dull coat dried 2 to 3 days, I did light rust and rust around the exhaust pipes, heavier rust around the exhaust pipes, but not extreme rust there. Again, I sort of, it's only 2 or 3 months, so I didn't do extreme rust around there, just enough to sort of say, well, the exhaust pipe's been heating and drying, and it's been raining, so there's a bit of rust that's come through there. And then I did the grime. I didn't dull coat it after that. So once the grime dried, and I sort of played around the grime a bit with a bit of extra white spirit to sort of get the effect that I wanted. You will get a certain couple of streaks in certain areas that you're probably not happy with, but that's okay, don't worry about it at this stage. So once the rust and the grime had been done, I went to use powders, and you'll see I use a mix of Falero powders and Humbrol powders, and again using like a light sandy colour, a very, very light pale green colour. You'll see the exact colours in the slides at the end, and dark earth powders. Any things I weren't really happy with, I can sort of blend it and cover it up that way, and put a bit of emphasis and shade in areas that I wanted to. Again, that representing dirt and things like that. I didn't put any mud on. I've got plenty of mud to use that you would have seen on my Tiger, but in this case I didn't really want to get into the mud for this vehicle. I wanted to keep it fairly dry at this stage. I may add mud if I end up doing a diorama scene of a particular event, but to be honest, a lot of my stuff ends up muddy, and I'm pretty keen to keep this relatively dry. If I was doing a Russian East Front version, I'd probably keep it a lot drier and more dusty rather than grimy. But in this case, in Normandy, I've chosen to keep it a little bit grimy and hard hitting for that busy couple of months of withdrawing from the front. So that's where we are now at this stage. After this, you'll see some photos come up in a slideshow for you, which I can zoom in a little bit better. You'll see some slides with some vegetation camouflage on there as well, and you'll see some slides of products used. If for some reason you can't see it very well, just drop a comment and I will get back to you. Alright, so it's been pretty much a year really since I've sort of done another main project. Hopefully get into it a little bit more. Incidentally, I'm looking at supplying my own vehicle soon with tracks and things like that for sale on eBay, on an eBay store, so stay tuned for that. I'm just dealing with suppliers at the moment, but you're probably looking a few months, maybe a bit longer off on that. But I think they take a bit of while to do. Maybe with acrylics it'll be a little bit quicker for you. I personally like the enamels. I think once you master the enamels you can get a really good effect and a realistic effect, because you're actually replicating, particularly with use of mascol and cracking and things like that, you're actually replicating what would happen in reality. So look, leave a comment if you enjoyed this. Have a look at my other vehicles. More is coming. I've got about another 6 Stugs to do and a Nashorn and about another 6 Tigers, so I've got plenty to do. It's just getting the time to do it. Each one of these takes me about 2 months, I suppose, from where to go, 2 to 3 months from where to go, just mainly because I don't have time to do it every day. But let me know if you enjoy it, send it around to your mates, and I'll be able to pop some more up. But any questions, drop me a line and I will answer them as quickly as I can. Alrighty, well I hope you enjoyed the vehicle, the Stug III G Dragon. Overall, a kind of difficult build for if you're a beginner, but take it slow, it's worthwhile. It's difficult, and the instructions in them can be quite difficult to follow too sometimes. But there's a few good Tamiya ones out there as well, a little bit simpler. There's a good Tamiya Stug B that you may want to try as well. But hey, look, you know, as far as just hook in, you can always fix things up. If you get stuck in the instructions, again, drop me a line on this video and I'll get back to you. Alright, no worries.